Welcome to the channel, folks. If you've never been here before, I are Johnny. I did a spoiler-free recommendation for Evil Dead Rise way back in March. I don't do a lot of spoiler-free reviews because I'd rather be able to speak freely about a movie. But I did that one specifically because over the years there's been a real inconsistency within the Evil Dead franchise. Now don't get me wrong, it's a charming inconsistency in the sense that no two movies have ever been the same, but it is an inconsistency nonetheless. So, as an avid Evil Dead fan, I felt it was my duty to report my findings to people who might be on similar wavelengths when it came to this franchise. And for a small, struggling channel, that video did pretty well. But I'm doing today's video for a totally different reason. Evil Dead fans have always felt like family to me. But you know how some of the worst fights you can have are with your family members? I don't read movie reviews until I've done my own because I don't want to pick up somebody else's opinion in case they influence my opinion. After I posted that review in March, I read a lot of the thoughts and feelings of the professional critics and the normal fans like you and I. And while I wholeheartedly support everybody's right to be able to say what they think and feel, I also support my own right to be able to say some people's thoughts and feelings are stupid. Not your thoughts and feelings, those other people. According to what I read, it seems like a lot of people want Evil Dead movies to stay the exact same and completely change. They complain about the use of lines and scenes from the original movies while they're complaining things aren't enough like the original movies. Full transparency, I can't lie, I used to be the exact same way. If you're a fan of this franchise, I'm sure you already know what I'm talking about. But if you're not, I imagine from the outside this all seems pretty confusing. So I will do my best to explain things as we're going along through the plot summary. And as a reminder again, this time, there will be spoilers. Let's go. The movie opens with a modernized homage to 1981's granddaddy, The Evil Dead. It looks like another shot from Sam Raimi's innovative shaky cam, which is something fans of The Evil Dead are more than familiar with. But it turns out to be drone footage. For all the weight director Lee Cronin must have felt on his shoulders taking on this task, he had the balls to open the movie with a bold statement. And I, for one, thought it was perfect. Then we head inside where the girl from the opening scene's reading a very specific section of Wuthering Heights that references a supernatural occurrence in the book. The intense horror of my nightmare came over me. I tried to draw back my arm, but the hand clung to it, and a most melancholy voice sobbed, "Let me in, let me in." Don't worry, folks, I have absolutely no interest in wasting your time reciting Emily Bronte passages on this channel. That's what my other channel's for. You've pretty much seen what happens next in the trailers. It's a gruesome opener that also pays its respects to the Evil Dead with the girl reciting text from a book she can't even see. And if you consider we're only 6 minutes into the movie and director Lee Cronin has already tipped his hat twice to Sam Raimi and his legion of ravenous fans, you could argue he's paid his dues now and it's time to let him run wild with his own movie. And I do argue that. We meet Ellie and her family. Ellie's played by Australian actress Alyssa Sutherland. She lives in a condemned apartment building with her kids Danny, who's a wannabe DJ, and Cassie, who's a wannabe adult, and Bridget, who wants to tell everyone what they're doing wrong with their lives. A knock at the door brings an unexpected visit from Ellie's sister, Beth, played by Lily Sullivan, who's also Aussie. She's a guitar tech that's been out on the road in Thailand, amongst other places. And when Beth finds out Ellie's husband, the father of the children, pulled a disappearing act, it drives a little wedge between them because Beth ignored Ellie's calls when it all happened. But they hammer it out, and right when they're about to get into a deep sister session, an earthquake hits. The kids are in the basement at the time, and in the commotion, they drop the pizzas their mom sent them to get. And even Henrietta's Pizza's another hat tip to the iconic cellar-dwelling deadite from Evil Dead 2, played by Sam Raimi's brother, Ted. Box even borrows the line, "Come get some," and turns it into a slick pizza slogan. The quake cracked a big hole in the ground and created an opening to the building's original basement, which was a bank. And inside one of the vaults, young Danny finds a lot of religious merchandise and crucifixes and Christy stuff. And oh yeah, there's a Necronomicon too. Danny gets the brilliant idea of selling it, thinks it looks like it might be worth something, and he thinks his mom could use the money. But Bridget, being Bridget, calls him a thief and speaks to him like she's a 40-year-old angry woman, and I'm absolutely fed up with these sorts of characters. There are literally millions of these confused, young, angry people roaming the planet nowadays, but the good news is there's only one of them in this movie. And between you and me, things don't work out all that well for her. Amongst his takings, Danny's also snagged some properly retro vinyl. Why are there records amongst the holy paraphernalia? I have no freaking idea. And the records contain, amongst other things, a recitation from the Naturam de Monto, aka the Book of the Dead. And why are there readings from the Book of the Dead on retro vinyl records? I've even less of a freaking idea. And if he'd somehow unearthed a 2-inch tape recorder the way they did in the first 2 movies, these people that are complaining about the records being stupid would be complaining that there was a lack of originality. So shut up and let the young, aspiring DJ play his records for us, for the love of Pete. The inevitable recitation of the incantation sends Ellie hurtling to the ground floor in the elevator. And from this point on, the loving mother we're introduced to in the opening act becomes the movie's first Deadite. And it's done so in a familiar yet new way. We know it's happening because we've seen it happen before, except it's modernized and it makes perfect use of the new location. And there's no tree rapies. And that is probably always a good thing, probably. The lights go out and Ellie returns to the apartment to give us the scene we all saw in the trailer. Then she vomits up enough coconut milk to fill a bathtub, and then she's dead, mostly. And when Beth tries delivering a heartfelt bedside goodbye to her sister, Ellie sits up. So they stick her in the bath to try and cool her down, and then she does the screamy thing Maya did in Alvarez's 2013 remake. Personally, screaming doesn't scare me. It pisses me off, especially if you're in a theater for it. The only thing worse than screaming is surround sound screaming in Dolby. Anyways, it didn't feel like typical Deadite behavior in 2013's version, and it doesn't feel like typical Deadite behavior in Evil Dead Rise. But I don't hate it. And for any of those people complaining there was no trademark Deadite humor in this movie, in this scene, Ellie calls her children titty-sucking parasites. I guarantee you, there are a lot of non-Deadite mothers that wish they could say that to their kids a few times a week. I'd suggest throwing something into the comments if you agree, but I doubt that's the kind of thing you want to announce to literally the whole world, even if they truly are TSPs. And then the former tattoo artist's mother gives her bitchy daughter her first face tattoo. Not that she asked for one. And then between them, the remaining family managed to get Mama out into the hall. And then while she's out there, we get a cool bird's eye view of her dismantling each of the neighbors one at a time. And there's loads of the Evil Dead to be found in this segment too, what with all the eyeball hors d'oeuvres. For any of you that don't know, this gag was originally in Evil Dead 2. And for the people complaining that Evil Dead Rise's version of it is ridiculous, I say yes. Yes, it was. What exactly do you expect when Sam Raimi stole the idea from the Three Stooges? Back inside the apartment, Disco Danny Terrio's spilling over with guilt, so he shows Beth the Necronomicon and what he's done with the records. And while that's happening, Bridget goes to sort out her facial ink. And while she's doing that, a very interesting combination of special effects bring the scene to life. It starts out directly lifting a vintage stop-motion effect from Linda's scene in The Evil Dead with the famous pencil in the ankle. But a moment later, there's a practical special effect I've never seen the likes of. Look at this. Where are they rooting the blood from? And then she pukes up squirmy wormies. Meanwhile, Ellie's trying to manipulate her tiny, little, adorable, innocent 10-year-old child to open the door. This is another scene that featured prominently in the marketing, but have a think about how messed up this concept really is. She's using her child's love and youthful naivete to get her to open the door so she can kill her. That is sinister. Not surprisingly, the instant the door opens, Cassie's taken violently by the throat. Beth saves her and gets the door closed again, and then the sisters argue back and forth about Beth being a slutty groupie in her job. Then Beth finds Bridget in the kitchen, and she's gone full glass guzzler. And here we get the famous cheese grater scene you might have heard about already. It's simple, and you can feel the meat coming away from her leg when you watch it. I do have an issue with Bridget's gloating during the attack. It did feel more like something Bridget herself would have done, but it's a minor gripe. At least she's talking, right? That's more than you can say about 98% of 2013's Evil Dead. After they dispose of Bridget, they wrap her up, and Beth decides to listen to the rest of the LPs to see if they contain any information about how to stop all this madness. But while she's listening, Ellie gets back into the apartment through the vents in the roof, so Beth has to kill her sister again. While she's doing that, Bridget comes back, still wrapped up in the sheets, and kills Danny unceremoniously. That means it's only Cassie and Beth left. So they get to after departing, but Ellie follows them into the hallway, so Beth shoots half her limbs off and they escape to the elevator. Lee Cronin fills the elevator up with blood and a hat tip to both The Shining and the original Evil Deads. Both of the original Evil Dead movies featured scenes with staggering quantities of blood, so Lee Cronin kept the tradition alive by filling the elevator. 2013's version closed the movie out with it literally raining blood, but to me it didn't have the same effect, as putting it somewhere it didn't make any sense to have that quantity of any kind of liquid. So I think Cronin handled this particular challenge perfectly too. They get to the underground parking and into a car, but it gets stuck in a pothole. That's when the amalgamated bodies of the rest of the family and the dead neighbors come crawling after them. We're shown a quick image of it in the Necronomicon, but it's a first in Evil Dead history as far as memory serves me. And the climactic battle between good and evil features shotgun blasts and blood and Bruce Campbell quotes and, of course, the chainsaw. The amalgamated abomination is mulched into liquid while Beth wears the final girl face in a very natural way for an actress that's never done this sort of thing before. And Cassie and Beth survive, and I, for one, am very frickin' happy with this latest installment. If you'd have spoken to me back in 2013, I'd have told you in no uncertain terms that Fede Alvarez hadn't made an Evil Dead movie. I refused to acknowledge it as part of the franchise, and I know I wasn't alone in my thinking because my nerd friends and I talk about this shit all the time. And even if that was a lie and I have no actual friends, there are plenty of comments in the comment section of my spoiler-free review to confirm I wasn't alone in my thinking. But I have matured since 2013 because the hard truth is, Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi are not the same people they were when they created the originals so many of us are infatuated with. They're both artists and they're obviously way older, and as an artistic person myself who's also way older, I know the idea of creating the same thing over and over is like a death sentence to a creative person. So, to echo the sentiment of the end of my spoiler-free review, if you find yourself comparing Evil Dead Rise directly to the originals from over 40 years ago, of course, you're well within your rights to do that if you want to, but I can tell you from my own personal experience, the moment I accepted the past is in the past with the Evil Dead, I was able to see Evil Dead Rise and even Alvarez's 2013 version in hindsight as horror movies, which of course they are. And don't worry folks, I have no interest in wasting any of your time doling out pseudo-life advice on this movie review channel. That's what my other channel's for. Until next time. It's me, Johnny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!